So my name is EMILIE POIRIER and I'm the head of short film here at FNC, and I'll be your host for this Q&A. You've just watched the program #1 from Les Nouveaux Alchimistes competition, and in this program there were like 7 films. We had Serial Parallel from Max Hattler. We had There Must Be Some Kind of Way Out Here from Kohlberger. The Selkie by Monade Li. We have Something to Remember from Niki, Lindroth von Bahr. Untitled Sequence of Gaps by Vika, Kirchenbauer. Dissolution Prologue Extended Version by Siegfried, Fruhauf. And Imperial Irrigation by Lukas, Marxt. And so with us today for the Q&A, we have Kohlberger. Hi.
Hello.
We have Monade Li. Hey.
Hey. Bonjour.
We have Vika, Kirchenbauer.
Hello.
And we have Lukas, Marxt.
Hello, pleasure being here with you guys.
Thank you. First of all, welcome back to you all, because you were all programmed at FNC with us before in different sections. So it's really cool to have you back with us. And I will start with like a general question for all of you guys. So can you please introduce yourself and your film? And we will start with you, Rainer.
That's me, right?
Yeah.
Rainer.
Yeah,
my name is Rainer Kohlberger. I'm filmmaker, among other things. Like I also do live performances and I do installations. So like in between filmmaking, visual arts and music somewhere. And yeah, the film you've just seen is out of the practice that I've started a couple of years ago, where I take images from movies, so it's kind of like found footage, or you could also say search footage, and I totally transform it and make them my own images and create something else also out of it. And so my film is called There Must Be Some Kind of Way Out of Here, and it's all dealing with the apocalypse. That's it's like a very recent that this year, like it stands really for the apocalypse, I would say, like this kind of like feeling that something changed. So that the term etymologically really also means nothing more than a change, not necessarily at the end of times, or something like unveiling or a revelation. And so it's not just this year, but because the film mainly I did last year, and in the last few years, the talk about the apocalypse has been more and more, I would say, and also like in our culture with climate change and all the images that we see from right now, for example, from California, but they are really something this year, but it's been going on also last year, 2 years ago, also in Australia, and also like. So these images that we see, it really makes us feel about the end of times, but we've seen it before, of course. We've seen it before in popular culture, and we've been not trained, but we already know what's happening. Or if you think back at 9/11, the apocalypse was real, and it was on TV. It was like a Hollywood movie playing out in front of our eyes. Of course, it was a big tragedy, but I was fascinated by the fact that it's really connecting, like what's going on in Hollywood cinema, and why this thing of disaster movies has been going on for so many years, and also how it is connected to something that what Naomi Klein called a disaster capitalism that we're in right now. Mm-hmm. And so it's more or less a critique about what is going on in Hollywood disaster movies. It's never really talking about real change. It's more like that the old status is reestablished right at the end. So nothing really changed. There's some heroes who saved the world and everything is reinstated. So it's kind of like the apocalypse happened, and it's happening in front of your eyes in a big spectacle, but there's no real change happened. And I was kind of like using all these images out of disaster movies, but yeah, there is definitely a change in my film, let's say.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. We'll have the same question for Monade Li. So can you please introduce yourself and your film?
Oui. Yes, of course. Hi, everyone. Hello, Emilie. I'm a filmmaker from Paris, and I am working on video art, actually, experimental video art. And I'm presenting the Selkie, which is an imaginary creature. And I worked on the theme that I really like. I since, you know, a few years ago, you know, a little bit of my films, and the theme is that duplication that leads to disappearance. So the Selkie, I don't know if everybody knows the legend, but this is a creature from the sea, and often compared to a mermaid, of course. And but I didn't work on the mermaid itself. I worked on the fact that this female try to reach the sea, but never achieve it. You know, she's crawling. She wants to go back to sea, but never succeed in this. And the off voice that you can hear, you can or listen or just, you know, try to understand is a male voice, because all the aim, she wants it to go back to the sea because of a man, because of a kind of a, you know, anger or something. So she wants to crawl and go back to the sea because she's never want to be on Earth again. And this is a really nice kind to talk about the Earth, actually, because we are on the Earth, but we wanted to go outside or in the space or elsewhere, you know. And it's to me a kind of expression to say we're all going to disappear.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we'll follow with the same question with the Vika. So, like, please introduce yourself and your film.
I'm Vika Kirchenbauer. I'm an artist and filmmaker and musician, amongst other things. I contributed the film Untitled Sequence of Gaps, and it is a film I made as kind of a reflection on trauma, violence, and images, or like especially about trauma that is repressed, that doesn't have an image. And I made a film about that in the form of an essay film, essentially through the metaphors of light without the visible spectrum, or electromagnetic radiation outside the visible spectrum. And essentially it's kind of asking a few questions about kind of societal presumption that violence always is something we can see from all positions. So we think that violence is something that if it happens, we see it. But I think that's not necessarily the case. Not all forms of violence are visible from all perspectives. So just because we can't see certain forms of violence from where we stand, it doesn't mean that they're not there, exactly. So, and similarly with like light that we just cannot perceive, there's something felt by those whom it strikes, like if your skin gets warm from sunlight, it's there, but you could never see the infrared light that makes it feel warm.
Thank you. Question for the last one for Lukas. Can you introduce yourself and your film, and maybe also your background?
Hello, I'm Lukas Marxt, and I'm a filmmaker and artist. And I'm working since quite a while in Southern California around a desert lake called the Salton Sea. And what we saw now in the program is a film called Imperial Valley. It's the third one of a ongoing series. And it has as a main protagonist, as I said already, this sea, which has a quite long, intense history, which starts by the sea got created, the lake got created by an accident, then followed by holiday mecca for people in LA and around the area, spending there in the 60s, lots of time with boating and water skiing, and then going on to the collapse of the whole sea, which happened in the end of the 1970s, which created a huge algae bloom because like around the lake, it's the biggest monoculture growing in the US, and all the fertilizers and pesticides are ending up in the Salton Sea, which has no outlet. So everything sits there since barely 100 of years, and created a kind of a death spiral. And through the algae bloom, like it took out all the oxygen out of the water. So there was a huge fish die-off followed by a bird die-off. And this is only the background. And then I stumbled upon that they also did some pre-nuclear tests there in the 1940s. And that's where my film is based around, like from the first person view perspective. I'm created kind of a photo film where I'm using just a camera from the phone and like moving through this landscape and trying to get some kind of a connection with a voiceover, which is explaining us a little bit about the environmental, geological and political background, what is happening in these areas.
Thank you, Lukas. I have a more general question that you can all answer like one after the other. You all say like we are in a program of Les Nouveaux Alchimistes, so it's like more of a experimental cinema. So I wanted to know like what interests you in like experimental cinema or video art, and if we can call it your practice, like experimental cinema or video art, and why is this your outlet to speak about the subject that you are like tackling? So we can start with Rainer.
Yeah, I would say whatever you call experimental cinema is the original cinema. Mm-hmm. So cinema really, for me, is older than older than film. So I'm dealing a lot with the perceptual apparatus that is at the forefront of being manipulated when we sit in front of the silver screen. It's not some, I mean, it's deep involved in my practice. The film you've just seen, maybe it's a bit less. It's also like very noisy and blurry sometimes, but it's but where I'm coming from, I'm doing a lot of like this kind of like stroboscoping images, or really like challenging the spectator's gaze. Yeah, but I'm really interested in being on somewhere, like going somewhere where there is going to a land where no one's been before, maybe like say it's like somewhere like that. Or I mean, it's challenging, of course. It's not easy to really achieve this goal, but yeah, it's something that is very connected to what I am fascinated by from what I think is noise, because noise is for me something that has to do with the blurriness, with something that is very vague, and everything that is new in the world is very noisy at first. It's not very sharp or anything. Yeah. And so noise is a very central in my practice. So that is my my own personal approach to why I am interested in experimental cinema, and I call myself as an experimental filmmaker. Yeah.
Thank you. You, Natalie, what is your point of view on that?
Well, actually, the question never been asked to myself, actually. For me, it was obvious to do experimental things, because it's what I feel, it's what I like. And I started with a short film, you know, a minute. And my very first film, I was a student in architecture. And to me, the space and the body is crucial. You know, it's a concept. To me, it's a way to express your ideas. And my first film was underwater, so it was completely experimental for me to start underwater, because I didn't know how to swim. So it was very, very funny. It was, to me, the first experiment was that. And after years, I try to express my ideas, my feeling with how do you say, images, but you know, like landscapes. And to me, to experiment something is to study the images as movement. So I try every time I try to put images, you know, landscape or something in movement, and also with the music, because I work a lot with composers and musicians. And to me, in experimental, you can do that. You know, you can put your music, you can put your off voices, you can try to express something with the music that you can't, to me, you can't do it on short films, you know, that you can see at cinemas or something. You know what I mean? To me, it was obvious to work like that, because I love photographies. I love Francesca Woodman. You know, to me, it's my reference. And Francesca Woodman really tried to work on some frames every time, and some mise en scène, you know, scenography. And to me, it's the essential thing. Of course, it's not very, how do you say, open to every kind of public, of course. You know, it's a short audience, a very small audience that are really that is really interested in experimental. But to me, it's the only way to express things. Experiment.
And for you, Vika?
I'm interested in making work about the form and the medium itself a lot. Also about the context of its reception, like the way that moving images are consumed in museums and galleries and festivals and cinemas and so on. And especially, it's a kind of a way of meditating on the format itself, when we consume so many images, and images are understood to bring evidence. And so especially when we think about violence, and we think about the representation of trauma and violence, then I think it's important to also question the medium itself and where its limitations are, of what is representable, what is showable, what is perceivable, and what cannot be seen, but is still there, and we need to find a way to address things that we can't show and represent in the same way. So in that sense, it makes sense for me to work in that way and not use a totally different medium. At the same time, I think I often struggle with the term experimental film, although that's an umbrella term that makes a lot of sense, but I don't experiment really. Like, there's not so much happening that I don't know before how it's going to look or feel, or like in terms of rhythm. So yeah, I wish I was more experimental in my process, but everything is really controlled in the end, so I always struggle with like calling it experimental.
Yeah, okay, I understand. And thank you. And Lukas, for you?
For me, as my work deals lots of with exploring different spaces or regions. So I have developed for myself, like the first question I ask myself, or what I try to build is like to have and set up an experiment. So for this new film or film series, there's a very simple task. What I'm interested in is finding a nuclear dummy bomb, which was dropped there in this region next to the lake, and then to use it as a red thread and for more exploring the area. And so I see it as an experiment with an unknown result at the end. So for me, it's a very playful use of what is around me. If it is a camera, can be like whatever, from the phone, from a normal camera on a tripod, like how can you observe, and then also how do I observe then the subject of interest. So it has to do lots with experimenting, being on a place for a longer time, and then getting into a dialogue. And I don't know, probably also for me, it's more interesting than having a straight, clear idea where I have to go and then just to rebuild it in a way, to have it more as a sculptural approach. Never thought about it in this way, but maybe like for this kind of question as a response makes sense to see the images, yeah, more like a clay and dough, what you bring in form, and not losing the idea or the first question which set up the experiment, and then to follow through this thread, I would say.
Oh, that's really interesting. Thank you. I'm going to go back to Raina, and I will ask you maybe more like specific question on your film. Like you said some words about like the disaster movies and Hollywood and representation of destruction and everything, and what interests you on that matter and on that subject matter. And can you elaborate why it was at that moment in your career that you were deciding to do films on disaster movies?
A second, I have to close the window. There's some construction work going on.
Me too. There's some construction outside.
Everywhere.
Yeah, everyone sucks. Yeah, good question. It was not really from, I mean, I started doing this, it's from two sides. The one side was to, that this method that I've come up with, where I work in the history of the found footage cinema, but not really also changing the material dramatically, like we would know it from other artists, starting from Len Lai or whoever, or these people who were manipulating the celluloid material by chemical processes, stamp breakage, for example. And I do this as well, but with algorithms, with my own developed algorithms in a way, and with machine learning tools that really allow you to, yeah, come up with your own aesthetic, I would say, or with an aesthetic that I'm interested in. And I mean, and the other approach, and yeah, and part of that approach was that I was that my interest in noise that I've explored before, that I've explained before, has something to do with also action cinema and explosions, because fire itself, or how, if you generate fire in the computer, like action movies are generated these days, at least most of them, it's algorithm based on noise. Yeah. So I created one film a couple of years ago, Keep the Dream Burning, where I connected these two aspects, like noise and explosion and action cinema, and the whole idea about abstract noise and digital noise. And from that on, I was also seeing, as I've said before, more of these images that are real, whatever real is today, but we've seen in the news, and we see like the world burning.
Yeah.
We see, yeah, we have more and more terms like, I don't know, there's nice term doomers for a whole new generation of people that are really pessimistic about the future. And yeah, we have these guys called Extinction Rebellion for countries. It's all based on something that, or like they are basing their thinking about the sixth mass extinction that you can read about more that people think, okay, there's, or yeah, from whatever point you say, there is the sixth mass extinction happening. So it's clearly in our current times that there is a big thing going on, and we don't really change it. I mean, we're all living, or most of us are living in a capitalist world, or like capitalism has the world, it's dominating it. So the problem is a little bit that, because, I mean, there's this famous thing by Frederick Jameson. I mean, it has been repeated so many times, but it was also central to my movie making. And the term, the saying is, we can now imagine the end of the world easier than the end of capitalism.
Yeah.
It's really like this, the thinking, like we wouldn't need to change that much actually to really deal about climate change and to really make it like sustainable for everyone. But we can't imagine even something else going on, you know, like a couple of decades ago, we were all talking about communism and I don't know, different kind of forms we could live in, but it's actually, I don't know, we can't really imagine living in another world, really, I would say. Like, it's always like capitalism is strong and stronger also through disaster, like Naomi Klein says it. Like, the capitalism uses the disaster to make itself stronger.
Yeah.
Even so, it's really this kind of like what's going on politically right now, and in combination that we really would need to change things when it comes to climate change, but also when it comes to a lot of other things. And in the end, it's always capitalism that wins in a way, and it's also like a little bit, and that is, in that thinking, there's also a little bit like the apocalypse included, because it's kind of like a doomsday thinking, because okay, there's, I don't know, or yeah, there would something, yeah, as you've seen in my film, there is like a definite change from the beginning to the end. So it's all vanishing more or less, and I don't know. I mean, I'm an optimist, so that's the first time I've thought myself, oh, weird, but I mean, there's so much going on. I'm not sure anymore myself. All of a sudden, I mean, I'm still an optimist. So, but still, like there's this element of vanishing in my movie.
Yeah. Also, it brings me like to another question. Like, when I'm seeing this film, it's like you're critiquing like capitalism, consumerism, and you are linking that to like the postmodern pop culture, and it's really like the spectacular of like the pop culture. But at the same time, your film is kind of spectacular too, like the technique that you are using. So can you like speak to us about this, because you could have chosen to be like really like neutral and clear, and your film is really like spectacular, and it's like a physical experience. So
yeah, exactly. Like on the other hand, all this politically problematic action cinema I really enjoyed, on the other hand. Or I go to the cinema, okay, I really like to be blasted away and see explosions. I mean, maybe I also reduced it to its essence. I'm fascinated by the explosions, or by something like, yeah, coming out from CGI, the newest stuff, or also if you do it old school, like the Mad Max movie, something like really big and spectacular and with big money.
mm-hmm.
And in my film, it's really reduced to that element, you know, the whole plot. I don't need the plot, actually. I mean, it's kind of like, so I like the spectacle also. It's not a denial that I would say, oh, it's, but I take it for what it is. I throw away all the rest, and yeah, it's pure spectacle, I would say.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna follow with a question for Monade Li. So you talked about like the Selkie and this figure, and we've seen here at FNC your previous film, and the Selkie is kind of the prelude of this film. So can you speak about your film that was named Perceive People, and the link between this film and your practice?
Of course. Yes, actually, yeah. The Selkie that you're showing now is the prologue of PPP.
Yeah.
And it was a kind of a, you know, a nightmare of the guy, you know, who is working, you know, he always do the same thing. He put pebbles in the holes and different size and everything. And there's something happened in his head because he thought about a woman, and this woman to him was something that is going to put him out of this factory. And we imagine with Paul Hill, you know, the co-director of the film, we imagine a kind of a vortex. I don't know if it's really clear, but we wanted the man to go out and to reach this woman. This is two worlds, actually. His dream, his nightmare, and the real life, the life we often have, you know, on Earth, working every day, doing the same thing and everything. And the other world with the Selkie is the imaginary world. And I wanted to show the other world with Selkie, with the second film, because Paul Hill and I just chose a little part of the imaginary world to the first film, and I wanted to show actually the real thing that he has got in his head, you know, because he really feels this woman, you know, that becomes another woman. I don't know if you see that, but the woman, the first woman in the black hair, which is me, and the other girl has this, another girl is blonde, and the two girls, you know, just become one, and thought about this kind of duplication and then the disappearance.
And is the Selkie kind of your alter ego? Like, did you create that in that mindset?
It's not really an alter ego, but I'm interested in the disappearance and the how do you say, the woman in landscapes. So to me, and in different elements. So the elements of the Selkie is water, but I put her out of the water and I put it on the sand. And that's why we use the pebbles, you know, the black pebbles that you can find in Iceland, you know, in the Black Sand Sea and everything. And we used it just to put the link between the Selkie and the man. But no, it's just something that, you know, I always work with the name of women, you know. I don't know if you noticed this, but my first was Diatomée, Clair Obscur. You have Malora, you have Candice, you have Holly that you showed at the festival, Alma-Lisa and everything. Every time it's a woman. And to me, the Selkie, it sounds very feminine, you know, the Selkie. Even if you don't know the legend, you know, you imagine that it's the name of a woman. And to me, it was very nice to study this kind of creature, imaginary creature, with the theme we use in the Perceive Pebble.
Okay, so thank you, Nathalie.
Merci.
I'll follow with Vika. Yeah, you spoke about putting in an image like violence that we cannot see but we are feeling. can you develop on why you wanted to express like traumatic experience with light and reflection? Why did you choose light and reflection?
Well, I was gonna make a film about not being able to remember childhood. And of course, it's difficult to make a film about something you can't remember and not, you're also not able to represent in any way, basically. So I was thinking more and more, and at the same time I had been working with infrared cameras for about 5 years now. And my idea was always kind of to bring those things together. And one short video that I shot with that infrared camera, you showed in 2016, I believe.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And all of that was kind of a pre-study because I was interested in kind of processes of translation. Because as humans, we cannot see infrared radiation, it's impossible. So there's a process of translation where a camera, it's not really a camera because it doesn't produce images, but like an apparatus that measures the temperature per pixel, let's say. And then with that information of the different temperatures, it allocates, or you can basically choose how it will be visualized so we can understand what is hot and what is cold in the image. But it doesn't make us see something we cannot see. So since I've been working with that quite a lot, with processes of trying to make things visible through technology, or translating them, visualizing them, but never really making them visible, as I was thinking about like making work about memory loss, I kind of thought they could perhaps go well together. And that was then a long process of making that work, because with the text I wrote, it had to make sense on like different levels of, like a personal level, a metaphorical level, a scientific and physical level. So that was like a really difficult process of writing a voiceover that would be coherent on all of its levels. Because whenever I kind of changed a word, I had to kind of check the new word against all other words of all kinds of metaphoric levels. And so that was kind of the most strenuous work.
And you said like at some moment like you are interested in memory, like in your film we feel it's public memory but also like private memory, and what interests you in the visual and virtual representation of memory?
I think it comes from kind of my interest in memory on a personal level, with like lapses or like many years of like not remembering. And I think that is kind of the core of my interest. But then as things are happening in the world politically, with like images of violence as they're shared in social media, that becomes a question I think about. What is re-traumatizing for some people? Who needs to see something that they could not see before? Because many people, when we talk about police violence, they have seen that for decades. But not everyone has been able to see that from where they stand. So those images can have an agency and they can do good, but I'm thinking about what it means to like portray violence. And that's also in my film towards the end, the question of that witch burning ritual that happened really close to where I grew up, like 200 meters or something from that house I grew up in. That kind of happened every summer. And I got a grant to shoot a project that had to do with that. And then when I wanted to go there and call the people who did that, like it's the local firefighters, I think, were like behind it or involved in it. Then they said they just stopped doing it. And I was still interested if we take away the representation, this kind of symbolic violence of like burning a straw witch every year. Also, of course, as a memory of like burning real women hundreds of years ago. if just taking away that representation of violence, if that makes the violence go away that still exists in that region, and it's those are forms of violence I know quite intimately, and I think just because we do things or we take representations away, or we take kind of the symbolic image of violence away, I don't think the violence itself that strikes people goes away. Maybe it can be communicated less about it because it becomes less visible, but it doesn't really go away just because we remove the image. So all of that together kind of
Yeah, totally.
made the film kind of.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna go with Lukas, and as you said, like it's not the first time you work at the consultancy, so it's like your third film on this. And can you describe like the previous film and what they are different to this one, and what they are relating to?
Okay, so the first film I started around working the consultancy was about mainly focus from a bird eye view from a drone on this gigantic agricultural growing there. Like as I mentioned before, the biggest agriculture or monocultures in the US were providing 2/3 of all vegetables and fruits during the winter months for the US. And so I stumbled actually coincidentally to this lake where still remains from this fish die-off, where what I read in the end of the 90s, 99, more than 7 million fish dying a day. So the whole shore was covered. And when I was there the first time in 2015, there were still lots of fish bones around and also rotten meat of fish and birds. And like just the smell and everything was like so overwhelming that I did not know like what to do, but I knew that I have to come back, or that this is a certain interest focus, because I could not understand like how this can happen, that nobody deals with it. Like there are also a lot of ghost towns around the lake, everything is abandoned, nobody cares. And then I tried with my film, with the first one, Imperial Valley Cultivated Runoff, to actually depict the lake, but then I did not want to film abandoned houses and dead fish bones. And so I found an entry point for me, like of the circle of the water, which is used there. So there is a dam built around the whole lake, which is around 150 miles. The All-American Channel, which is also comes from the fed by the Rocky Mountain snowmelt. And this is used for fertilizer, for growth of the whole vegetables. And then it sinks into through the ground, through the soil, into the Salton Sea. And then like there are some water systems which are cleaning the water from the sea again, that they can use it. And then the fascination was more to talking about this catastrophe on a very ironic, visually beautiful point, from high up in the sky till very low, and just flying and scanning and showing this immersive production. And after this, then I discovered a wooden structure in the lake, which is around 10 by 10 meters and 7 meters high out of the water. And then it turned out that it was a bombing target in 1944, where they were dropping atomic dummy bombs, like 172 of them, to practice for Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So they built dummies which having the exactly same shape, size and weight of the original bombs, and dropping them out of steel concrete into the lake. And then I started working now on the fourth part, actually, which deals with this wooden structure. And actually I'm trying also to cover the other end of where the bombs were loaded. So this was the second film in Vandover, which was called Loading Pit. And it's about atomic bomb loading pit, which is just a huge concrete pit, because the bombs were too big at this time. And then they were lowering it into this pit driving with an airplane over it and then putting it and loading it inside, flying 1,000 miles south to the Salton Sea, dropping it and doing it back. And so I'm stuck now in this research and trying somehow to get out of it, but till now there are still too many arms developing each time, which I'm like curious to follow and like just building more pieces in a way to getting a little better overview what is all connected in this multiple history, which is very much there in the desert in the Southern California and coming together in a way, and trying to map it out and getting it in perspective somehow.
Mm-hmm. And even if your film is like really like pretty and beautiful images and well made and blah blah blah, like we clearly see like the influence of like colonialism or like land colonialism and also like the Anthropocene. So like is this like subject that really interests you, like that you want to show like in this like beautiful way?
It definitely is an entry point, and also with the first nuclear tests in June 1945, which is also marked as a, or some scientists claim this is the beginning of the Anthropocene, where it definitely can measure like the impact of human on the planet, which is irreversible. So definitely an idea for me also why I would like to find one of these relicts in a way to mark or to bring back a relict from a different period, from the Holocene, so said. And there's all I think it speaks for itself in a way, to making it like it's so present in the images that I can not and don't want to deny it in a way. It's the landscape I'm digging into, and it's like how it is preserved. And then I'm also using machine views in a way to scan it. So it brings it all together and trying to get in a dialogue or communicate in a certain way and finding the right tool for the right place to observe it. Yeah.
Cool, thank you. So interesting. Before closing, because it's already like 10:51, do you have any last word you want to share with us, like on your film? Anyone?
Well, I'm very happy and thankful to participate in this year's edition and being with you guys, which I didn't see any one of your films in the program. And so it would be very nice, the sooner the later, just to share contacts, links in a way that I can now fulfill my illusions, how you created like the whole things around it. So it's a pleasure, and would be a pleasure to see all of your films.
I agree. Yeah.
So thank you so much for being here with us. I know it's weird time to do Q&A online, but thank you so much. And it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure to like program your film together, and I'm really thrilled so that people can like watch them and like understand more of your practice. So, and I will say, like, if you like this program, please don't be shy and share it on social media. And everything will be online until October 31st. And feel free to discover other film and other program on our platform. And thank you so much for being here. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.